Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Jo Larson, publisher with Franchise Times Magazine, and I'd like to welcome you to October's edition of Franchise Times Prime Time. We are so excited to have with us Floor Coverings International and Premier Rents as our two brands today. But first, we wanted to invite Editor-in-Chief of Franchise Times, Laura Michaels, to talk a little bit about our October issue and give us a heads up on what's happening this month. Laura, we got a top 200 or top 400 going this month.
Yes, and I still have to correct myself sometimes by saying top 200 because we renamed the project this year, and so these are our recently released top 400 numbers that are in our October issue, which you can find in print and online. And so this is a new look for the project this year. In the past, it's been the top 200 or the top 200 plus. And so we made the change to the top 400 this year to better encompass the largest brands in franchising and also include some of the growth brands. So you'll see from 1 to 400 a really wide range of franchises that can be researched using our fantastic data. So the top 400, so our audience knows, is part of it's the culmination actually of a 5-month research and reporting project that we start in April. And so we are, diving into these numbers, we're vetting them. This is the most objective ranking in franchising because it's based on global system-wide sales for the largest U.S.-based franchises. And then we do our reporting through the end of that project. So our editorial team is contacting the C-level officers at these various brands, talking with them about what worked, what didn't, how they grew sales, and especially, within the context of 2020, the brands that did grow sales, that was really noteworthy. And depending on what segment, they happened to be in, whether it was, a restaurant segment that performed well or a category like home services, some were fortunate and some really had to make some big adjustments to get through last year. So there's lots to dive into within those numbers.
And expanding that has been a lot of fun. As you noticed, I was almost tripped over top 200. I almost said that, but I got to top 400 because we did want to talk a little bit more about some of those brands that are up and coming. What about our cover this month?
Yes, it is. You can tell who it is just by looking at it. Peter Cancro, who is the CEO of Jersey Mike's. And so our restaurants editor, Nick Upton, went out to the Jersey Shore to one of their flagship restaurants out there and sat down with Peter and some other members of the Jersey Mike's executive team. And I don't want to give away too much, but the story really illuminates how Jersey Mike's came through COVID and how they made some really, big decisions through last year that resulted in them moving up 25 spots on our ranking, which is huge. And so for those that want a little bit of a dose of inspiration,
yes,
definitely read that profile along with our other 3 brand profiles as part of the package. But definitely Jersey Mike's is one to watch. And they're approaching that $2 billion system-wide sales number, which is pretty incredible.
Definitely an inspirational story. I loved some of the bold moves that they took. So when I was reading it, I thought that was really interesting because they did have to take bold moves in 2020.
They did. They didn't shy away from investing in their marketing. They didn't shy away from investing in their stores, which is a really, noteworthy part of their journey through last year. Their corporate team invested in remodels throughout the system for franchisees to the tune of, I think, $75,000 per store, which is a huge number and a big investment to make when there was a lot of uncertainty last year. And it paid off for them. So it's a great one to read.
Right. It is. Top 10. We all love talking about it and seeing where those big players went up and down on that list. So tell us a little bit about the top 10.
Yes, and so we very nearly had a shakeup in the top 10 with 7-Eleven nipping at the heels of McDonald's. But and I wish I had these numbers, ingrained in my mind, but I'll look at my notes here. So even with a 6.8% decline in sales, and so for McDonald's, that's $7+ billion because they had crested the $100 billion mark the previous year. So they, even with $93.3 billion in system-wide sales, they hung on to the number 1 spot, which was pretty close with 7-Eleven getting closer. they came in at just under $92 billion. And so with their acquisition of Speedway, which was made this year, and if they choose to rebrand those stores, we might have a new number one next year for the first time ever. We shall see. But it's really notable that, even with that big 6.8% drop, that McDonald's was, still the largest. And they make a name for themselves no matter what.
Well, we'll be watching 7-Eleven to see what they do. New things, like you say, are on the horizon for them. So.
And they're, that segment, the C-store segment, is one that we're certainly paying attention to, and that benefited, from sort of this trend toward quick in and out visits last year. A lot of prepackaged goods. We've got some news stories on our website right now with 7-Eleven's push into QSR. They're trying out some new restaurant concepts, so that is really interesting to see. Elsewhere in the top 10, KFC kept its number 3 spot, but they were down $1.6 billion in sales, which is notable within a chicken segment that otherwise, is performing incredibly well.
And QSR.
Yes, and within QSR. So to see that out of KFC was a little bit surprising. And then Ace Hardware moved up into the number 4 spot, which was a big move for them. They grew sales by $3.5 billion, which was the best dollar amount sales growth that we saw across the top 400. And, that's not too surprising given all of the home projects and do-it-yourself activity that was going on last year. And so Ace Hardware definitely benefited from that, and other brands like that in that home services category. That was huge.
Yeah, talk a little bit about the categories. Where we made gains, who lost sales, what happened there?
There was some of it was pretty intuitive in terms of, businesses that were able to continue operating through the last year that were deemed essential services, or ones that, didn't have a big retail storefront component. So real estate was our biggest growth category. The entire category was up 18.5% last year. And then the segment of health and medical, which includes home health care, it includes healthcare staffing, chiropractic, those type of businesses that were in demand through last year. That category was up 9.2%. And then, some of the less fortunate ones were, restaurants overall were down 5.1%. And then those brands that are in the personal services category, which encompasses fitness, hair care, massage, swim schools, kids entertainment, you think of all of those types of businesses that suffered closures through last year. They were down overall just over 20%. And so they'll be looking to make up some of that ground this year.
Okay. Yeah, it really is an interesting issue, and it's got a lot of great information and inspiration, as we said. Do you want to give us a little tip-off on November?
Yes. I won't say who is on the cover, but I will say that there has been a huge explosion in boutique kids education brands. So thinking specifically about coding schools, that is a segment that we are watching quite closely, as there have been some new entrants into it, and also a lot of private equity money that has come into that segment. And so we'll dive into that in the November-December issue, which will be out next week. And elsewhere in that magazine, we're also covering emerging vegan franchises, especially those, within that fast casual segment. That is an area that we're starting to see some growth. Brands that are doing just vegan food versus, the big brands like a McDonald's or Burger King that is introduced an Impossible Whopper or something like that. These are brands that are purely vegan. And as they're looking to grow, they are finding some supply chain challenges and having to come up with their own products. So that's a fun one. And then we're also looking at the health segment within fast casual, specifically the acai bowl growth.
Okay.
So there's some unexpected things in this issue in terms of new brands on the scene, and those that are have some exciting growth stories to share.
Well, we're going to look forward to that. November-December issue will be out in a couple of weeks. So thank you, Laura. This was really fun. It was great to hear about the October issue, and we'll all take a look at that. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.